Hi, welcome to my video. In this video I'm going to show you how to post-process a time-lapse using LRTimelapse software and Adobe Lightroom. I'll also show you a couple of different export methods, one so that you can export in 1080p and another in 4K. So to get started, pop your memory card out of your camera into your computer. I'm using a Mac, but it doesn't matter if you're using a Mac or a PC. Then once you've got your memory card in, open LRTimelapse software. This just takes a minute to open. Also, for some reason, it makes my screen recording software go dark, so you'll have to excuse the lack of quality, but you can still see what's going on. Click on the Import tab, then click on the Import button. Then select the location of your memory card, and what we'll do is we'll create a folder for these to go into. We'll just make that today's date, and then click OK. Also, I'm clicking here, do not import JPEG, because the software I use to capture the images collects RAW and JPEG. Then we'll click on Import. This will start copying the files from the memory card out of the camera onto the hard drive of the computer. You can see the progress bar climbing up. It actually does this very slowly. It takes quite a long time to copy the images across in the LRTimelapse software. So we'll just speed that up a bit now, and I'll get back to you once that bit's done. So now we're nearing the end. There we go, it's now finished. So we'll click on Close. And then we'll click on the Visual Workflow tab. You can now see in the column all the images that you've imported are now in a long list. You have a preview on your left, and it's just loading the data in, as you can see on the bar up the top. There we go, all 400 images. Just loading the last few in now. There we go, so that's all the data for all the images that are loaded in. Now we can click on Keyframe Wizard. It will automatically select the number of keyframes that it thinks you need. Quite often this can be just one or two. For this project we'll probably only need one. You can now see in the column below that it's starting to populate the first column with numbers. The software here is analysing each frame and giving it a figure, a luminance value, based on the details that it's already collected, and is calculating a number based on the exposure, the ISO and the shutter speed. This works its way down through all 400 images and takes some time, so we'll speed it up for a minute and then we'll carry on afterwards. We're now nearing the end of this process. You can now see over on the left there's a jagged blue line. Every one of the high points on this line is related to a point where either the shutter speed or the ISO of the camera is changed during the time lapse. Obviously, as the light fades, the camera needs adjusting to keep the exposure correctly, and these are the edges that you can see here. We'll then go and click on the Holy Grail Wizard button. This brings up a new set of sliders and a new orange line over on the left-hand preview. What we're aiming for here is to try and make the orange line as flat as possible, so we can stretch it out a bit. You know, you can get it so that it goes the other way, but try and get it as flat as possible. The actual angle doesn't matter at the moment. Then we can rotate it to change the angle. So at this point, we'll try to make it as flat as we can in relation to the yellow line. Then we can adjust the offset, and we use the offset to adjust this whole line up and down so that the average of the orange is based around the yellow line. Once we've done this, we can click on Save. This saves the metadata to the images so far, and it's then time to export the images out into Lightroom. So we'll open up Lightroom, I'm using Lightroom CC, but as far as I'm aware, this works in most versions of Lightroom, so it shouldn't be an issue. Once Lightroom is open, move your screen around a little bit so that you can actually see both windows at the same time, because you need to be able to drag off one and drop onto the other. So with Lightroom open in Library, drag this button from LRTimelapse into Lightroom. You'll then see the 400 images coming up on the screen. Make sure that Add is selected. And then I always put my images into a collection. It just keeps them tidy. So we're going to create a new collection and we'll just use, again, today's date. Once that's selected, we'll click on import and Lightroom will start importing all 400 of your images. Again, this is something that takes time, so we'll just skip forward quickly. And with that now finished, we'll click on the Develop tab, which brings up our large image. And then on Filters, we'll go down and we'll click on LRT4 keyframes. This shows the single keyframe image that we've chosen. We can edit anything on this image except the exposure. Don't touch the exposure. So we'll add a little bit of contrast. There. I'll pull down the highlights a little bit, make the shadows more visible. It's just bringing the foreground out. We'll then adjust the level of the whites. Boost them a little bit, and then the blacks, where we'll just pull them down a touch. Now I can notice that the picture's wonky, the level of the river, so we'll just add a level in to bring it level. Obviously, as part of the process, this also adds a crop, but that's fine, it's not taking too much away from the scene. We'll then add in a little clarity, just to make those trees nice and defined. A little bit of vibrance, just to boost the colours in the sky. And that's it, we'll click on done. So this is our final adjusted image. Then what we need to do is go down to the thumbnail and right click or double click, go to metadata and save the metadata to file. Then we're back into LRTimelapse. Let's put that back up on the screen. And then we're going to start working through the next line. So we now need to hit reload. This reloads the information from that file that we've just saved. It actually reloads the data into all files. LRTimelapse then recalculates a new luminance curve to work alongside any adjustments that we've just made. Then we go over and we click on Auto Transition. Auto Transition reworks out based on the adjustments that you've made across keyframes. As we've only adjusted one, it doesn't have much to do at the moment. Once that's done, we'll then go down and we'll click on Save again. This just saves the metadata to the files. Once that's saved, we're going to create a visual preview. So click on Visual Previews. And now in the window in the left hand side, you can see that the image has changed. It's moved and changed to the crop that we made in Lightroom. And you can also now see just on the far end left side that there's a little pink line starting to come across the screen. What the software is now doing is it's actually looking at the visual luminance of each frame. And again, it's creating a figure for this luminance and it's plotting them across in a pink line as opposed to the blue line that we had before. Again, this is something that takes quite some time to do, so we'll quickly fast forward through that until it's completed and then carry on the other side. So now that's coming to an end, you can see that we have a pink line that goes all the way across. It's still not very smooth, but it's a lot smoother than the blue line that we had there previously. We can now go over and actually press play and watch a preview of our time lapse so far. Doesn't look too bad. There's the odd little bit of light flicker in there that you can see, but it's not terrible, it's starting to come together. But now that that's completed, we have the option to do a visual deflicker. A new button's now appeared in the third column next to visual previews. So what we'll do is we'll click on the visual deflicker button. Clicking on this opens up a new slider. This is defaulted to 10. You can also see over on the left that we now have a green line behind the pink line that's looking much smoother. You can go to the extreme where it completely smooths it out. This doesn't actually give a very good result. So what we're aiming for is go to 0 and then move it just enough so that you get a nice smooth line, but it still mostly follows the curve. So that's sort of about 7 or 8 in this case. Then what we do is we click on apply. That applies the new curve, and then we can preview again, and the end result is starting to look like something that we'd actually want and publish out the other side. So what we have to do now when that finishes is just go across to the third row and click the save button next to visual deflicker. This again saves the metadata now to every single image. There is a render video option in LRTimelapse Pro, but I'm just using the trial, and it just tells you about the next steps in the workflow if you click on it for Lightroom and After Effects or Adobe Bridge users. Anyway, we're using Lightroom, so open Lightroom. Change the filter back to the LRT for full sequence. Select the first image and then Control A to select them all, and then double click or right click. Go to metadata and then read the metadata from files. You can see up the top that it's now reading the metadata that LRTimelapse has created. If we click on one of the images here, you'll see it change as it loads the metadata for that particular file. What's happening is that LRTimelapse is now applying the changes that we made earlier and the smoothing of exposure to all of the images in the sequence. This takes some time, so again we'll just skip forwards and pick it up again on the other side. With that now done, we'll go down to the bottom and just select one of the images. We'll do Control A or Command A to select all. Then we'll change back to library view and then click on export. This opens the export pop-up window, which gives us several options. We'll choose the LRT JPEG 4K. It actually gives us a warning. It tells us that we're working out of an incorrect collection. Lightroom defaults to the last imported collection. So what we need to do, you can see there, previous import, that's the collection that it's currently showing. Even though they're the correct images, in order for it to export, we just need to go to the name of the collection where we exported it. So there's today's date, we'll click on that. It's exactly the same images, it just references to a different location. Then we'll go down, click on export again. This brings up the export pop-out window. We've already selected LRTimelapse JPEG 4K. The executable file stays the same. If you then scroll down in this window, it actually shows you instructions on how to use the LRTimelapse export. It's fairly straightforward. It creates an export of your 400 images, which can then be used by LRTimelapse to create a video file. What we'll do before that is we'll just change the output path, change that to the one that I'm using for today. I'm just going to create a new folder. We'll just name this LR output for Lightroom output. Make sure that's selected, go down, find the new folder that I've just created, which for some reason is right down at the bottom. We'll select the new folder, click OK. Just one last check of everything's fine, and we'll click on export. Exporting 400 images from Lightroom takes quite a bit of time. So again, we'll just skip forwards and pick it up on the other side once all the images are exported and ready to be worked with. So the export's almost finished. There we go. Render task has been submitted to LRTimelapse. Okay, so what we need to do is just pop LRTimelapse open again. That just takes a minute to come open. And now it's opened with a render video pop-up box. So we have an output file. You can rename that if you choose, but I just leave it as is. Being the trial version, the only options we have are for MP4 and 720p or 1080p output. So we'll select 1080p. It's going to force it to 16:9, which it will do by trimming 100 pixels off the top and bottom, which is fine. Frame rate is already set to 25, which is fine. Quality is high. Color sampling is 420, which is fine. It's also going to delete any intermediary sequence after rendering, because once it's rendered, we don't need that. So we then just go down and click on render video, and we'll see down in the bottom left hand corner that it's now rendering the video and starting to work its way across. Again, I shall just skip to the end of this and we'll pick it up when it finishes. So now that process is finished, we'll quickly pop down to Finder. We'll just look at all my files, which shows the most recent first. We'll double click on that and open it up. I'll just maximize this window. And there we have our time lapse in HD. The screen recording software makes it look a little bit jumpy, but it's actually fine. So now we've done that, we've shown you how to import your images into LRTimelapse and go through the process to turn them into a video. I'm now going to show you a second method of exporting them. So we'll just close everything down and we want to go back to Lightroom. Just maximize that back out. I'm going to go back into develop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the crop to an aspect ratio of 16:9. This is so that when it's exported, it's already in the correct format for a video. So we can move the crop around and we'll make it as large as possible and just select the best bit that I can really. So I've decided to have less foreground and more sky, because the sky is where the action is at. And just move it up a little bit so that that tree on the left is on the far left on the border. Click on done. So this is now our new layout. So again, right click, double click on a thumbnail, go to develop settings and copy settings. You want to copy everything except exposure. Exposure is the one thing that varies on every image. Click on copy, then do Command A or Control A and select all. And then you'll see you have 400 of 400 photos selected. Then go back up to develop settings again by doing right click or double click. And you want to paste the settings onto all the images. Once this is done, all the settings are pasted. So now all the images will have a 16:9 crop in the correct place that you've shown them. We want to go back into the library. Again, make sure all images are selected, then click on export. What we're going to do is we're going to export TIFF files to the hard drive. So now go up, click on the menu, select hard drive, export to, and then choose a specific folder where you want it to go to. I presume you won't want 400 files on your desktop. And then just click on choose and select the location you want it to go to. So this is the folder that we're working in. I'm going to create another new folder and I'm going to call it 4K export, because we're now exporting images of the right size to make a 4K video. Select the folder and pick choose. So we're going to rename the file. The file name's a bit long, so we're going to change that to be something else. So I think we'll go for custom name and sequence. This will give the image a custom name, then a dash, and then just sequence the numbers from 1 to 400. So we shall call it, for now, we'll use today's date again, which is the 19th of January 2017, and we'll just call it 4K. So now we're going to go down, we're going to put quality at 100%, and we're going to change the file format to TIFF. TIFF retains all the quality, and then we're going to resize the images as they're exported. Now, what we're going to do is we'll input the sizes for UHD. So the sizes for UHD are going to go in here. So the width of UHD is 3840 and the height 2160. We'll just change this to 300 pixels per inch because I know the quality is there, and don't enlarge, but it won't need to enlarge the images anyway. Everything else here is fine, so we'll click on export and it will start the process of exporting 400 images again. We already know that this takes quite a long time, so I'm just going to skip forwards and we'll pick it up when it's done. Now that's completed, we're going to open up Adobe After Effects. So it'll just take a moment to open. Adobe After Effects is very useful in the sense that it can import a sequence of images and turn them into a video clip, which is what we're using it for here. So obviously the images have been exported in 4K UHD size, something that the LRTimelapse trial wouldn't allow us to do. And since we're opening the images and what will be a video sequence in After Effects, I think we'll make some other changes while we're in there as well. So new project, right click or two finger click and import. You just want to import a file. Then navigate to where we've stored the 4K export files, which is under today's date, 4K export images, untitled export, and just select number 1. You can see all 400 images are in there. Then the important part, while that preview loads, is don't click on open, click on options. Under options, click on TIFF sequence. This will ensure that it opens the images as a video sequence, and then just click on open. After Effects has now imported all 400 images into one file, and this is now a video file. It's rather large, 18.6 gigabytes, but once we've created the video, we'll get rid of it. Right click, interpret footage, main. What this allows us to do is set the frame rate for this clip from the images that we've imported. So I'm using 25 frames per second. Then go back to the clip again, right click or double click, new comp from selection. We now have our time lapse in a composition. We could export it straight away and we'd be given a 4K sized video clip, but I'm actually going to make some changes to it while it's in here. For me, there's too much foreground detail, and over on the right, there's a couple of reeds that are encroaching in this corner and you can see them. So what I'm going to do is just go over to Effects. I'm going to type in levels and I'm going to drag levels down on top of the clip down there. And then I'm just going to change the output black slightly just to remove some of the detail from the foreground and give it a nice sort of punchier black colour, and just to sort of drag that whole foreground down so the main focus is the sky. With that done, I can see the reeds still down here in the bottom right hand corner. So I'm going to go up and select the pen tool, and I'm just going to mask this corner off. Just do a few clicks around the reeds to make sure they're well covered, and then complete the mask. This has created a mask that only shows the area inside the mask. So what we need to do is just go down and invert it. So now the area inside the mask is blank and the rest of the image is showing. So we're going to create a layer, new, a solid, and a black solid. Then we're going to drag that solid underneath. So now all that can be seen through that mask is completely black. So the reeds will no longer be there. They're not visible anymore. I think that'll do for this clip. So what we're going to do now is File, Export, and add it to the render queue. Down in the render queue, I'm just going to change the file name. We'll let it export into that folder for now, that's fine. Just going to delete that dash off the end, hit save, and then we'll hit render, and it will create the video clip. This takes some time, so again, we're just going to fly through it and pick up again on the other side. So now that's finished, we have a 4K rendition in our folder, which is almost identical to the one from before, just in higher resolution. I think we'll leave this one there. It's gone on for quite a while, but I wanted to be quite in depth with it because I certainly know at least one person that wants to see how to do it. Links to all the software used are in the description below. If you like what you've seen, consider following me on social media, or if you'd like to help me in the future, I am on patreon.com. You can help support me there. A link for that is also in my description. I think I'll just leave this now by playing the final time lapse at the end. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.